There we go. We're here. At least me and Deb are here. Where's everybody else? Shows there are 3 people, so there must be at least one other person. And 7 likes. Of course, this is why I go on 10 minutes early, so that people have time to pop in here, say hi, get their notifications, all of the above. So, yeah, I have 3 topics again today, and I'm looking forward to at least 2 of them. The other one's gonna be I don't know, it's one of those I always feel a little I don't know why, a little nervous every time I've gotta approach a subject. But we'll get to that. I don't wanna give it all away too soon. I'm gonna keep you guessing. But, one of them, which isn't the first topic. The first topic's gonna be what the title is of this, but the second one is just some herb questions, medicinal herb questions, and I remembered just before coming on here that I wanted to. I saw a couple more plantain leaves, little bug eating. The bugs love my plantain. Look at that. That's almost the size of my face. There was one even bigger than this, but the bugs ate even more of that. Well, it might have been the same size, but it had a big old hole. The bugs love it. I don't know which bugs they are. I don't know if it's slugs are eating them. I don't know. And then these are, you can see, look at the chew marks. The chickens will eat them too if they can get to them, but these don't. I don't think the chickens were able to get to these. This doesn't look like chicken peckings look a lot more sharp, but these are pretty good size too, but nothing like this one. I can use it as a fan. Oh man, it's wet. I just threw water all over my face. I'll have to show these again later if they're not too wilty by the time I get to that. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, can you just see this? Have somebody stand there and fan me with this. Actually, that's what I usually think of with the rhubarb leaves when they're like this big. And it's like, look, it's a big fan. Some people were commenting on that picture I posted about how big the plantain leaves are here. I really think I noticed that it kind of depends on where they're growing. Mostly if plantain, same thing with dandelion. If it's growing out in the middle of the yard, the leaves never really get that big. But if it's growing in a very, like in any of my garden areas, are going to be the soil is going to be richer because we're always adding stuff to it, like grass clippings, free stuff, grass clippings, leaves, the chicken bedding, so they're getting the broken down straw manure. And the dandelion leaves and the plantain leaves will just get really, really huge. But if they're growing out in the yard, like most weeds might do, the leaves typically only get this big. But the other thing I notice is the ones that get more dappled sun rather than just a full day of hot, hot sun. Not that we get a whole lot of hot, hot sun. We've had some lately, though. It's been pretty warm. They, if they're exposed to all day sun, those also don't get so big. So I think a lot of it has to do with the big ones I pick are from those more rich soil areas, but also they're from the areas that don't get they have at least a little bit of shade because of the other plants around them or where they're located on the property. They just don't get the all day sun. So I think that's partly what makes a difference. So they're not getting overheated. But feed you grapes too. Hot, humid. Okay, man. Well, Florida. I saw the Florida. Deb can relate to that. She's also from Florida. I don't know how far apart those places are, but is there really much difference in climate from one section of Florida to the other? I believe there are areas in Texas that aren't as hot and dry as others, from what I understand. But I know Washington State has completely two different climates, and ours is even more different than the rest of the places around us on our side of the mountains. But you go over to, and I say this all the time, but you never know new people coming in, maybe hearing this for the first time. But I grew up on the hot, dry side of the state. Well, hot and dry during the summer, and along the Columbia River, and it's not very green over there compared to here. And there's 4 seasons, so they do have winter, and they're usually pretty even. So you got 3 months of winter, 3 months of spring, 3 months of summer, 3 months of fall. It's usually everything's broken up into distinct seasons, unlike here, where it's rain, and then it's more rain, and it's even more rain, and then it's sun. And you might have some really hot days in there, but they're not very many. They're usually pretty scattered out. So I saw somebody local posted their thermometer, and it was like, was yesterday, day before, and it said it was 90 degrees. And I'm like, is it really that warm? I don't think it's warm. I think it was that warm, but I think it's because we had a pretty strong breeze blowing most of the day that sort of kept things a little cooler. And every so often some just kind of wispy clouds. So I didn't think it felt that hot, but it was pretty warm. But we do pretty good about opening up the windows and doors when it's cool, especially early in the morning. Open everything up, turn the fans on, let them circulate push out the warm heat and push in the the warm heat. Push out the heat and bring in the cool air. And then once it starts warming up, then everything gets shut. And any windows where sun is coming directly in, the curtains get shut, which is usually only my sliding glass door right there at this time of year. So let's see, we're still hot and humid. South Florida is more tropical than North Florida. I would assume so. That would make sense to me because of how long the state is. That's what I had guessed. But yeah, like I say, Wenatchee is like, it's not even, or Washington State. I grew up in Wenatchee. Most of the state is the dry part. And so that's funny to me that Washington State is seen as the rainy state. And it's like, that's really not even accurate because it's only everything west of the Cascades. And even then, there's, like we got Squim as a sun belt. So they hardly get any rain, even though they're on the west side of the mountains. And then you've got where we're at, we get the most amount of rain, more rain than any other places on the west side of the mountain range. So it's funny how just even, relatively small Washington State is compared to just like the whole United States. And even within that, you can just have some really, really distinct and different climates, which is why learning how to grow in your own area is important, and not just going by what so-and-so says from such and such state or climate, because it may not work for you. So Squim, for instance, is where Paul Gauci lives, and everybody knows the Back to Eden Garden. Well, he lives in a sun belt. Squim is very, very different. It's only 75 miles from us, yet it's very different than here. And even areas farther east and west of, just all around Squim. That's why it's called the Sun Belt, because it's just this weird little area where the clouds go all the way around and all the rain goes all the way around. So it's interesting, but it's also, it's kind of cool in a way. But yeah, I mean, we can't do everything that Paul Gauci does because our climate is very different. So anyway, it is time. It is time. It is time. I did that quote last week where I did when it is time. Ooh. I don't know if anybody got that one, but it's a movie quote. So every time I hear somebody say it is time or I say it is time, I always think of that. The movie is called Heart and Souls. Had Robert Downey Jr., Charles Grodin. Oh, I can't think of the names. I can see their faces. Kira Sedgwick. Anyway, some of you might remember it. Some of you might have seen it. It's a cute movie. I can't think of the name of the female co-star, the main female co-star. But, well, I guess she wasn't super main character. But it was more about the other ones. Sizemore, I think, is the name of the other guy. His last name. I can't think of his first name. Anyway, so let's get started. Today, or the first topic, is so as you can tell, this is the watching AI video, so you don't have to. And it was called 10 Shade Crops No One Talks About. So there were several things wrong with this video, but there were several things that were right. And some things I cannot fully attest to. So I thought it'd be good to talk about it. And even though it was 10 things, I'm going to list off 13. Let me spray my throat. It has definitely been a little itchier and more sore lately. I need to go back to using that black seed oil in my throat. That seems to have helped quite a bit. So anyway, we had a wicked front pass through last night and our temps dropped into the 60s. Whoa, crazy. Oh, I forgot my greeting. Hello, everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. So let's talk about these 10 shade crops that no one else is talking about, apparently, according to AI lies. But it might still be some good information, especially for people who either like us live in an area that does not get a ton of sunshine, but also you're trying to make the most of your small spaces and you don't have a whole lot of open areas, that get all day sun. What are some things that can do well? The first thing I want to say before I get into this list is that I think calling them shade crops, most of these, is a bit of a misnomer because it would make people believe that all these things do best in full shade with no sun. And that's would not be accurate, especially with my own personal experience. But there are several of these I happen to know do quite well with just a little bit of sun and most of the day shade. So the first one, I think most of you would already know this, and this is lettuce. And lettuce really does best if it's not getting exposed to all day very hot sun, because it can cause it to bolt, it can cause it to wilt and wither up. It just wants to go right to seed and say, I'm done, I can't take the heat. So here's my seed, bloop, 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 and that's lettuce for you. So it does really do best if it can stay in places it doesn't get all day sun. However, I have found that certain lettuces will take on better color if they can at least get some sunshine. So anything that's a red in color, like a red romaine or any of those red lettuces, if they can get at least a little bit of sun throughout the day, they're going to take on a much more beautiful red color and turn nice, deep burgundy. But without that sun, they might just stay very pale and mostly green with just a little bit of red. So thank you, Joni. Really appreciate that. Really do. Sometimes I feel like I don't say it enough, but yeah. So anyway, so just keep that in mind. If you wanting your red lettuce to actually look red, you're still going to want it in a place where it's going to get at least some dappled sun. Lettuce, grow lettuce. And then, let's see, was there something else on that? But yeah, I just, from experience of trying some different places, even here, even in our cooler climate, if my lettuces get too much sun, they go to seed and they say they're done. Which seed is good too, because then you can save the seed to grow them next year. But if you don't get a chance to really get any salad out of the mix, it's kind of sad. The second on the list was spinach. Well, I guess, spinach is its own thing. It's not the same thing as lettuce, but I tend to associate them together just because they're usually used together when talking about using them fresh. Now, I would assume spinach would be the same as the lettuce when it comes to that. It's still going to want a little bit of sun. I haven't been successful growing spinach, but I've only tried a couple of times. I'm like, I don't really care. And it's not that I don't like spinach. I do like spinach. I like it both cooked and raw. Excuse me. But lamb's quarter is kind of a spinachy tasting kind of thing, and I don't even have to try with the lamb's quarter. It grows anywhere it wants to. And I got a lot of it coming up out there. And to me, I actually like the flavor of lamb's quarter better. Is it lamb's quarter or lamb's quarters? I've seen it spelled both ways. I've also seen it with a space in between lamb and quarter and no space. Lamb's quarters. Whatever. I get so confusing. So if you struggle with growing spinach, just try lamb's quarters. It loves it anywhere. And then, I mean, a lot of these that they mention is herbs. So just so you know, that's why I threw a few in of my own. The next they had these in two. Well, no, they had this one, and I added something to it. But I said it would be parsley, which I haven't been super successful with parsley, and the other one's cilantro. I find that uh, I've done best with cilantro when I grew it in my greenhouse right up under the roof. So it seemed like a lot of sun, but if I grow it out in the open and it gets all day sun, it does the same thing as a lettuce. It just bolts, goes to seed. At least you get the coriander, but I'm really wanting the cilantro leaves for making my salsas because I do like cilantro in my salsa. But anyway, so according to this video, parsley does tend to not like all day sun. So if anyone, by the way, as I'm going through this list, has experience in growing any of these things, either in shade, in sun, or a little bit of both, please throw it into the chat, into the comments below the video, so people can learn from you as well. Because like I said, I haven't had super success with either parsley or cilantro, except for that 1 year with the cilantro. But then we took those shelves out because we felt it was shading too much of the tomato plants below because they were right up high. They still seem to do good, but whatever. I mean, it probably was best. The other one, and this is another one I can't say from experience because I've never been able to get it to grow, surprisingly, and that is chives. But what I can say is growing green onions, I do notice where I grow them in pots. When I grow them in areas where they get kind of the half and half sun, they do pretty good. And I don't grow onions from seed. What I'm doing is I'm buying bunches of green onions, using them up and planting the little white part. I usually kind of break some of the roots off to sort of stimulate it before I stick them into the soil. And those are a cut and come again, just like the parsley and cilantro and the chives. You can just mow them down as long as you leave a little bit above the soil, and then they'll grow some more, and then you cut them down and you do it again. You do that with all of those. And that's one of the things I love about those is you can just keep getting fresh greens like that throughout the whole season. But for some reason, chives just, they don't like me. I'm sure there's other people around here that are probably growing them just fine, but they don't like me. I tried again this year. Nothing. They didn't even germinate. So I just have not had a lot of success growing any kind of onion from seed. That's why most of the time I just don't even bother. Get some, if I really want to grow onions, I'll get some sets. I do have some walking onions, and I've pretty much been leaving them alone other than just separating them out, every year and trying to fill up a couple of boxes with those, but they're not taken over as and repopulating as well as I hoped they would. The way other people were talking, "Oh yeah, these will be great for you." And I'm like, "Okay." And I mean, I did take one out and we ate it. It was good. I mean, I think took a taste of it and then used the rest of it in something. And they're good onions, but I just wish they would do better. The best year I had for onions was probably about 10 years ago. I grew red and Walla Wallas, but they were sets that I got from, actually no, I got those from the neighbor. I got both. He had a whole bunch of little sets and he gave me a bunch and they did really good. They got good size. So did I say Walla Wallas? So Walla Wallas and red onions. And I just haven't, I think part of it too, I just haven't, I did get sets a couple other years and they didn't do very good. It's funny how one year something can just do amazingly well, and then another year they're like, okay, no more. So garlic chives are a weed for me. Okay, see, in my experience, cilantro does best in early spring with mild temperatures, sun okay of temperatures mild. Maybe that's part of the problem. I did start it early and it started out good, but now that the weather's getting hot, even where it's at, it doesn't get all day sun. And they're not looking too happy. They just kind of stopped growing and I think they're starting to bolt. So it's kind of disappointing. Anyway, so let's move on from there. Another one, which I'd still put in there with the lettuces as far as how it grows, is the Swiss chard. So apparently Swiss chard is a great shade crop. Again, this is not one I can say from experience how well it does in full sun, full shade, or a little bit of both. I've never grown it. I've bought Swiss chard before. And I'm like, it's okay. Wasn't super crazy about it, so that's why I've never tried growing it. And I noticed at least what I got, maybe it was just what I got. I mean, it seemed really fresh when I got it, but it seemed like it also turned slimy and nasty very quickly. I don't know if that is a characteristic of Swiss chard. I mean, a lot of lettuces will do that, but I was a little surprised at how quickly it spoiled. Let's see. Then number 6 was rhubarb. Okay. I think years ago I had read that rhubarb can be a great shade crop, but here that's not the experience I've had. So when I first got a rhubarb plant, I thought, oh, it's supposed to do good in shade. So I planted it on the north side of the house, right up against the house where it never gets any direct sun. And it just didn't do good until I moved it out front. I moved it out front to the south side of the house where it gets full sun, and that rhubarb goes ballistic. And I have 2 of them out there. Goes ballistic. Actually, I think the ones I have out front aren't even the same ones. I don't think I actually moved it. I think what happened was that one back there died. It just didn't like not getting any sun at all. And then somebody gave me a cup. They were dividing up the rhubarb. And so they had all this rhubarb, which I should do soon. Dig mine, one of these years, dig it up and divide them up. But she gave me a couple of, tap roots that I planted out there, and they just go crazy. And so that's full sun. But then again, you have to also remember where we live. We get a lot of rain. and we don't get a ton of sun. And even we are getting a lot of good sun. Like it's really sunny today, but it's not a super hot day. We got a nice breeze going. It's actually kind of perfect weather, which means that, as soon as I'm done here, I'll be outside again. I was outside earlier. I was trying to clean all the soil out from under my fingernails, transplanting stuff, and I got more stuff I'm going to be moving around. But anyway, there's me sidetracking again. But yeah, it could be our climate. So if you live like in Texas or Florida, and you try to grow rhubarb, maybe in those places, sorry, but eat. That's all, folks. Maybe in those places it would do better in the shade as a shade crop. But even then, I wonder if full shade would still be the best thing for it. And like Tyler says, your full sun is our first hour and a half of every day. Let's see. Swiss chard is a good natural mulch that keeps weeds down and helps water retention for other plants. See, and that's kind of what I see with the comfrey. It starts getting too crazy, which it is too crazy right now. I can just chop it all down and throw it on top of the soil and let it break down, and it helps prevent moisture loss, etc. And then it feeds the soil. I mean, that's another thing that's great about comfrey. I mean, people kind of worry about it taking over their garden, and I get that. But if people remember that it's also, in fact, comfrey was one of the things I added to this list because of its multi-purpose. I mean, it's great for, healing inside and outside. A lot of people think it can only be used externally, but that's not true. You can use the leaves internally. I'll be covering this more in the other part of my video, but of my live in in the other topic. But it's also a great cut and come again. So a chop and drop, and so good for your soil. A lot of people will use their comfrey and make like a tea for their garden. Maybe mix it with chicken manure, or nettle is another one you can do with that. And speaking of, there's another one. Nettle is a great shade crop if you want to deal with it. Even though my nettle is out and gets quite a bit of sun where it's at, I think it stays protected somewhat. But again, as I'm saying, our climate, our full sun isn't going to be as deadly to something like nettle the way other people's are. But I know that it does tend to like shade. So if you're growing nettle for medicinal benefits, or even as a vegetable, that's something you can grow in a shady area. But just like the comfrey, it'll spread. But I have found it pretty easy to just dig it up and pull it back. I do that every spring. It does want to spread and starts, especially early in the spring. And then I just dig it up, yank it up. I mean, I really thinned it back this year. And then the chicks, the young ones, they love hanging out in that front section. It's just this time of year, it's just a little narrow section because it does stay pretty shady because of the shrubs there. So they hang out under the shrubs. And that they've kind of taken over that and claimed it as their own. And so the bigger chickens will mostly stay in the back, and the younger ones will stay in the front. And they keep eating that nettle fresh off the plant. I don't think I've ever seen any of my other chickens do that. So they have really thinned out that nettle, but it's okay. I'm not worried about it being destroyed. I don't see that happening. Okay, so now number 7, and please let me know if you've ever heard of the alpine strawberry. I think I've heard of it, but I'm not sure. Apparently, the alpine strawberry, it's not as big as like the strawberries you get in a store or other types of strawberries you may try to grow, but apparently it does. According to this video, I didn't look it up. I should have looked it up, but maybe other people can chime in and tell their experience on it, because I've never grown that type. I guess it's more of an old school strawberry. I'm wondering if it's more closely related to the wild strawberry, which wild strawberries usually only get like this big. They're just like packed full of flavor, though. Tons of flavor. Little small plant, little small berries, but so tasty. First time I came across wild strawberries was along the Oregon coast. And oh my goodness, they're so good. But I know there's some around here, but I've seen the plants a few times, but I don't know if I've ever actually come across the plants when they had berries on them. I probably should have dug them up and brought them home. What does that say? Didn't get that. Oh, it was deleted or retracted, so maybe they were retyping. See, I used to get sidewalk strawberries as a kid on roller skates. So is that are you talking about the wild strawberries then? Because they seem like they'll grow just about anywhere. Fresh chicken manure tea mixed with 20% water is a great nitrogen source. See, I just don't go through all that work. I know a lot of people do that. I'm the person that's like, whatever is the cheapest and easiest. I got to clean out the chicken coop. Okay, I'm just going to throw it directly onto where I grow my potatoes, corn, berries, things like that. And then I'm getting two things done at once. I'm fertilizing my garden. I'm cleaning out the chicken coop. It's easy. Neighbors over here got a bunch of leaves in the fall. They don't, and I say, hey, I'll take your leaves. In fact, the last ones they brought them over, they actually had them kind of mulched up. I was like, whoa, this is even better yet. And my garden's loving it. Our grass clippings, Patrick will go down the other piece of property and mow it down and then fill bags or even just pitchfork it into the back of the truck and bring it home and we'll spread it everywhere. Grass clippings are great. They're also a great source of nitrogen. Your acid loving plants will like the grass clippings, but I found that even layering it around, not necessarily mixing it in, but layering it on the top of the soil around things like your pumpkin, your zucchini, other things that we don't think so much as acid loving plants, it's still really good because what it does is it works that same way. It prevents moisture loss. It'll keep the ground underneath the soil nice and damp, and so you don't have to water as much. So strawberry is another name for an impact scrape. Impact scrape? Is this another joke that just went over my head? I've been slow lately, apparently. Gotta go feed the goats. Okay, Tyler. I'll probably still be here by the time you get back. Okay. So anyway, alpine strawberry was the name of that one. Let's see. Deb says they grow in the mountains of western New York. I thought wild and alpine strawberries were the same. That's what I was wondering. They could be. The pictures they were showing, but again, this is an AI generated video. They looked smaller, but they didn't look as small as the wild strawberries I saw, because the wild strawberries I found as a kid were like this, and the ones in the picture images they were showing were like that. And they were kind of more elongated looking, but I don't know if those images were accurate. You just can't trust AI with anything. Which, by the way, I forgot to say at the beginning, for those of you who are new to my series on watching AI videos, so you don't have to, I'm not trying to support AI. I just want to make this clear. I had somebody get kind of upset with me without understanding what the purpose is because I'm very much against AI and the way it's taking over many jobs, including a lot of us content creators. It's just they're making all this content and stealing our own content to add into their videos, and it's just a way for me to kind of fight back. So I take their stupid videos and put them in real human terms, because a lot of the information in them is not accurate anyway. So anyway, moving on. Next one, number 8 was peas. And I know when I grew just like your regular garden peas, shelling peas, I grew them out in full sun and they did really well. So again, our hot sun is not the same as other people's hot sun, especially since we don't get as much of it. However, I do know for certain that snow peas do not like full sun. They will too quickly, uh, especially if you don't keep them picked all the time. The seeds want to mature quickly. And if you have too many pods on there that you allow to mature quickly, and this will go with your garden peas too, they will just finish up. They'll say, I'm done. I made my seed. I've procreated. I'm done. So you got to keep them picked for one, but the snow peas will not last all summer if they get too much sun. So where I've got them planted, they get the later afternoon sun where it's not too hot. But all morning they don't get, through up until that time, they're hardly getting any sun at all. And they love it there. I found an area that they really thrive. And also being in a cooler climate anyway, they do tend to do well here. So that is something I know snow peas, and especially if you live in a hotter climate, you would probably want to, or and really sunny, you would probably want to grow them if they even do good for you at all in a place that gets full shade. I could see that being a possibility and only getting the light, just reflected off everything else. No direct sun, I think would probably be best for those. And okay, number 9 is lemon balm. This I can attest to. It likes it in both places. I have some lemon balm taken over my west herb garden, which only gets about half the day of sun. But I also have some growing out in the front yard garden, and it will go to seed faster, but it still goes ballistic. So either one, lemon balm, and you know what? That really does apply to most of your mint plants. Rosemary does tend to like a lot of sun and a lot of dry, but a lot of your mint plants, your peppermint, your sage, um, the lemon balm, a lot of them don't mind having a good amount of shade and will still do quite well. So I would say, just try it out whenever, if you're never certain. Here's what I do when I'm trying to grow something that I've never grown before, and I start it from seed. I like to have several plants, and then I'll plant them in different, once they get big enough, I will plant them in different places. I'll plant some out where they'll get full sun and less rain, some where they might get less sun and maybe still less rain, and some where they'll get all day sun but more rain, and just see which ones do best. And you'll find every plant's going to be a little bit different in what it's going to like. And that's really for your own climate is the best way to find out what's going to do best. So you can watch this video or these stupid AI videos and go, "Oh, this is going to work for me." Then plant all your stuff in full shade and find out it's not very happy there. And, or you can say, "Okay, I'll plant some in full shade and some in full sun and some in half and half, and then see which area they like it best in my climate." That's really the only way to learn. I don't care how skilled, educated, and experienced any other gardener is. If they're not living on your land and doing all that stuff on your property, not everything they say is going to be accurate to you. So, let's see, got it. What was that? I think what I miss. I guess I didn't understand that one. I'm going to move on. So lemon balm number 10 was wood sorrel. Now, okay. I thought this one was a little bit silly. It is correct that wood sorrel loves shade, and I think probably does best in mostly shade, because everywhere I've seen it growing, it's always been in a mostly shady area that gets hardly any sun. However, to call it a crop, I think it's a little bit silly because I don't know how many people would be growing wood sorrel as a crop, and maybe I'm wrong on that. Now, I like it. I think it's tasty. It's very sour, like most of your sorrels, or maybe all of your sorrels, like sheep sorrel and any of that. Most of them are pretty sour. However, it's one of those that's really high in the oxalates, so all the oxalate-fearing people are gonna freak out over that, so you don't wanna eat too much of it raw, even if you're not sensitive to that, because I know it can cause digestive distress, but honestly, I don't know that many people that would just be chomping down on a ton of that stuff in the first place, but I honestly would not see that again, I don't see that as being a crop, and I think they could have come up with some better ideas for this. Maybe it is for some, depending on how they're using it. Like, I know that sheep sorrel is one of those that's used in the Asiatic tea that's supposed to help fight cancer, etc. Um, yeah, it's very tart. It has a I like the flavor. I guess it tastes kind of like lemon. But, like, my niece used to call the wood sorrel is the one that looks like I mean, they all look very different from each other, but the wood sorrel is the one that looks like big clover, big three-leaf clovers, but big, like this. I mean, all the leaves. Well, they're not all that big, but they can get that big. So I'm guessing it's something that mostly likes areas like ours, because anywhere I've ever seen it growing, like when we first got the property down the road, it was growing right next to the real close to the creek where it gets a lot of shade. Down in Oregon, camping with family, there was a bunch growing under the trees. They tend to like growing under the trees, probably. Well, it's probably why it's called wood sorrel. I think it kind of feeds off of the bark and the rotting wood and all that stuff around the trees. So, with that said, now I already mentioned the comfrey as I think is a good shade crop that's still it does good either in shade or sun. It just likes both. It's happy wherever. I think it does prefer having at least some sun. But the other 2 I put in here was dandelions. So I think I mentioned the dandelions earlier when I was talking about the plantain. Dandelion doesn't need full day sun. In fact, when it doesn't get full sun, it gets bigger and big, massive leaves and it'll grow fast with minimal sun. And I think it still likes to have a little bit of sun, but some of my most beautiful, biggest leaf sunflowers are those on the west side that only get more of the setting sun, and they love it. I get those big leaves like that long and that wide. You saw, I think last year, or was it this year? I don't know. You saw me showing some of these leaves that were like this big. And then, like I said earlier, same with the plantain. These kind of grow well. These grow in an area that I would say gets mostly sun, but not as much as other areas. And but it also has much richer soil where that's at too. Same with the dandelions. And then the last one is potatoes. Now, when we were first trying to make the most of our backyard, we still had a 15-foot above ground swimming pool, a 12-foot trampoline, and I'm trying to make the most of every open space I can out there. This is before we had chickens, so we didn't have, the little chicken yard taking up space either, but, with that big pool right in the middle of the yard, it was just like, man, I'm really limited on space because that pool is where like most of the sun is. That's why we set it up there. So I decided to try growing potatoes. Remember, I was talking about earlier about the rhubarb. Well, I tried growing potatoes in that same spot. I think it was before I tried the rhubarb there. And the potatoes did surprisingly well. Now, they do seem to prefer to get some sun. I think they'll produce more, but they also tend to like a lot of water. So you can grow them in full sun, but if they're not getting enough water, you might not get a lot of potatoes. But same goes in reverse. You can grow them what am I trying to say? Not in reverse, but I think because because of where I was growing them in the full shade, the ground stayed very damp, um, very wet. I didn't have to water them much, and that's because of the drain pipe. So all the rainwater, it would come down in that same area, so it kept it pretty well watered. And I was surprised. See, I was always just trying things. I was surprised to find I had quite a few potatoes like this, and they were yellow potatoes. And yellow potatoes don't always get huge. They tend to kind of stay on the smaller side. Now I had quite a few that were good size. I got a decent little crop of potatoes out of those few plants I had in there. And so I was surprised. We use that area for other things now. I don't have anything growing there right now, but just to try it out, it was definitely worth it. Now, I have tried growing potatoes in other more shady areas and they just didn't do great. But I think it's because in those areas, it was not as much about the lack of sun, but more about the lack of water because they're areas that tend to stay drier. So those are the same, or the soil drains really, really well, maybe a little too well for the potatoes. So again, when it comes right down to it, there's a lot of things that may do really well for you in the shade, but you may just have to try it with one plant to see how it does. I wouldn't don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't put all your potatoes in the shade. Try them in different places, or all your rhubarb or whatever. Just like I said about that rhubarb, it did not like it there. And it didn't help too that the slugs will eat the heck out of them rhubarb leaves, and being in a shady area, it's going to get a lot more, a shady and very damp area, it's going to get a lot more slug action. So anyway, and I just thought of another one that that does really well over here on this side of the house that only gets the late afternoon sun, and that is my horseradish. I thought of that because the slugs love it there. They hide under the big, huge horseradish leaves during the day and come out at night and then eat the heck out of the leaves. But there's so many leaves that they never run out, and so they still have plenty to keep them cool and damp. But I don't worry about those too much because the horseradish is just great. It does way better in the shade area over here than it does, or in the partial shade. I would say mostly shade, than it does out front. I planted some out front and in the south garden, and that gets full sun. And that rhubarb over there, or not rhubarb, horseradish, is just not doing near as well as the horseradish over here. So there's another one. So that makes a total of 14 instead of just 10. And even though there's a couple on there I wouldn't necessarily agree should be considered shade crops. So let me catch up on a few comments. See, leaves are the biggest in the moist shade. Yeah. My yard is very shady and potatoes do really well every year, no matter the spot I pick, but we do get lots of rain. Okay. Well, there you go. Young hostas are edible and like shade. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. I tried growing hosta once, but the slugs love that too, and I just gave up because those young shoots are the ones that are supposed to taste like asparagus. But I couldn't get much of them because as soon as they're popping up, the slugs would, and I think they move that fast too. There goes my hostas. Why did I bother trying? Hi, Linda. I can catch the rice later. Yeah, no big deal. I mean, everybody's busy. I know today is, like I was saying earlier, super nice day. So it's kind of like, man, I should be outside. But then again, I wouldn't want to miss my time, and Wednesday's just more and more turning out to be a perfect day because Jason's with his dad. Justin doesn't work on Wednesdays usually. Today he was working. He works until like 9, but I didn't have to worry about it. I was able to do my this and that video and then come in here and do this. And not that I don't love my grandbabies, but if I want to actually get work done myself, it's a lot easier when they're not here. But I tell you, yesterday I had all 4 of them. It was utter chaos. I thought I was going to lose my mind. I don't know how some young moms do it with 4 kids. I really don't. I only had 2. And I know some people have, 6, 7, 8. I have nothing wrong with that. I think that's great. God did say, be fruitful and multiply, but I don't. And, it's funny because I taught dance and I could have 10 to 15 kids at a time. But then again, I only had them for an hour at a time. Bunch of screaming girls. And if the power went out and it was a afternoon class in the middle of winter and the whole room turned pitch black, your ears, oh, the screams. I'm like, calm down. You're gonna be fine. I'm back. Great. And your goats are happy. So I got distracted. I started talking about grandbabies. Yeah, Kyra was in a mood, so she was screaming most of the time. She wasn't interested in. I have to tell you a story though. So she was screaming, 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 screaming. She was so mad. But I knew she was tired. And usually I can rock her to sleep. She didn't want her food. She didn't want me to hold her or rock her to sleep. She wanted her brother, Jax. So Jax, we put him, they were all trying to play in the pool, and Kyra would go over the pool and hold on to the side and look in there, but keep screaming because she just wanted Jax. And so finally Jax got out of the pool. I never asked him to do this. He got out of the pool, dried off, changed his clothes, went and got in the rocking chair in the living room and lifted his baby sister up there with him. And she kind of laid across his lap and he just rubbed her back and she fell asleep. It was so precious. I'm like, Jax, I appreciate that so much. Because let me tell you that constant screaming, and then Rowan throwing a fit about something, and then Jace throwing a fit about something. And there was one point, all three of them were screaming. And I'm like, I don't, my brains are just melting right now. I don't know what to do. So it was it was just like, oh, thank you, Jax. He's really turning out to be a really good kid, helping out like that. Fern fiddles. Yes, we get lots of those around here too. The fiddleheads. I've never tried them. I got ferns that grow willy-nilly right out front here. I just leave them because I think they're beautiful. But I always forget about the fiddleheads until it's too late. Because it's like you got to get them at just the right time. And I'm never thinking about it. And it's way past that time now. Okay, so that was that. Let me go on to my herb Q&A after I do another throat spray. So I just been getting a few questions or comments. I thought it'd be a good idea to approach. Some of these things are things I've talked about before, but hey, it's always good to rehash this stuff. And I tell you what, a lot of times along the way, I learn new things or better ways to do things or more things about herbs. And hey, we should always all still be learning and never think we've come to a point that we've arrived. Because if we've done that, then we could be missing out on so much more that we could be learning, because nobody knows it all, especially when it comes to herbs. Nobody, I don't care how smart, how certified they are, knows it all about herbs. There's too much out there. There's way too much out there for everybody, any one person to know it all. So one of the questions I tend to get a lot is when it comes to harvesting. Usually when they ask this question, they're asking about a specific herb such as yarrow. This one was in regards to yarrow. Like, when's the best time to harvest it? What parts do you use? Well, a lot of it's going to depend on the herb itself and also the way it grows. What you'll find when it comes to herbs, most of them, though not all, will put on all their leaves and you're going to get the biggest, most beautiful, most nutrient dense leaves before the plant starts flowering. And so when it comes to harvesting the leaves, that's usually going to be the best time, because all of the energy is going into making those leaves. So that's why they're going to be most nutrient dense. And that's also why they get much bigger. So if you're harvesting the leaves with yarrow, I use both the leaves and the flowers, but I think if I remember correctly, a lot of the specific like styptic properties and more are in the leaves, but the flowers have their own benefits and they taste better in tea than the leaves. I can tell you that. So you harvest those leaves while they're getting nice, they can get that long and that wide, just like dandelion. But as soon as it starts going to flower, any more leaves it gets are going to be a little short and sparse. And yeah, just little small things. So leaves first on plants like that. Same thing goes with comfrey. Once it starts flowering, the leaves that keep coming on are smaller and smaller and smaller. Comfrey is easy because if you just hack it back, it'll just start all over again. And you can do that a few times before the season's over. But at any rate, so when it comes to something like yarrow, yes, harvest the leaves before it starts flowering and save those. And then when it starts flowering, then you can use the flowers, you can dry them up and use them in teas, or you can mix them in with the leaves and use them together, or you can save them for seed like I do these days. Though I do want to save some of my flowers for tea because it does taste better in a tea than the leaves do. I made a yarrow tea one time because I can't remember what I was making it for, and it was just plain yarrow leaf tea, and I really didn't like it, but I drank it because whatever it was I was trying to deal with, I can't even remember what it was now. I don't remember. But then you'll also have other plants like dandelion, for instance, that when it first starts growing in the season, it is a perennial, it'll get a few little small leaves. They're just small, but then it will immediately start getting flowers. So when it comes to dandelion, harvest the flowers first because the leaves are going to be too small and insequential, and all the energy isn't going into the leaves. It's just got to get some leaves out there so it can collect the sun, right? And the water. Because, the plants don't just collect water from the roots, but from their leaves as well. So then it will start shooting them flowers out. So you're going to harvest the flowers first before you harvest the leaves on a dandelion. Though there's not as many herbs that are like that, there are more that I'm not thinking of. Most of them are going to be in the dandelion family, very closely related. Your, what is it? The wild lettuce would be very similar. And I think, don't they, or do they get big leaves first? I don't know. All I know is the dandelion definitely gets the small leaves, then it gets all the flowers, and then it finishes out flowering. And once it's done flowering, it puts all its energy into making the leaves. That's when you collect the leaves. And that's when the leaves, especially if grown in a place that doesn't get full sun and has a good rich soil, the leaves are going to get big. They're going to get massive. I know I had one. What did I measure it at? Like 16 inches? No, 20 inches or something. It was huge. And you can just kind of tell when you get used to watching the way things grow. When something's growing that quickly and all that energy is going into that, that's going to be when it has most of the benefits, most of the nutrients are in it then, because now, like with the dandelion, it's no longer putting its energy into making the flowers and the seeds. It's been there, done that. So now it's all going into the leaves themselves. So thank you, Deb. She got the yarrow and the benefits of yarrow. Oh yeah, because I had two different videos. One's old and one's newer. One's really old, like back to the beginning. I think the first one where I've got the botanical name, the first one you linked to, I think that's my newest one. So that's the one I'd recommend. But, and then as I go along through my channel, I'm always learning more about the different herbs. So if I redo a video, a lot of times I'm adding more information that I've learned along the way. Okay, so let's talk about the comfrey. So somebody was asking a question about using comfrey as a tea. There's so much controversy, and I fell into some of this controversy. In fact, even when I shot my video years ago on the benefits of comfrey, I was talking more about all the external benefits because I still hadn't tried it as a tea because was still very nervous because of all the fear mongering over using the leaves in tea. But for those of you who've been around YouTube for a while and following different, herbal or homesteading kind of channels, a lot of you might remember Old Alabama Gardener. He grew comfrey, and every day I think it was his favorite tea because it seemed like he was always talking about like using comfrey for tea. And he was always doing videos on comfrey, but he drank comfrey tea every day. And I know Gudrun was telling me, I've heard her name before. It's another YouTube channel I've never watched. I think she has a YouTube channel. I'm pretty sure she does. I can't think of the name, but a popular herbalist that drinks comfrey leaf tea every single day. Every day. She didn't die. Now, Old Alabama Gardener did end up passing away. He was a very good man, but he was also elderly. I can't remember what he passed away from, but I can guarantee you it wasn't the comfrey. It was not the comfrey. But yes, that was definitely a sad loss to the homesteading community. He was such a great guy. I interacted with him a little bit. He'd watch my channel, and he just a neat guy. Appreciated him a lot. So after watching his videos, I finally got brave and decided to try it. And I started with just some real small leaves that had just come in and mixed them with some other things and found I really liked it. I liked the tea. I liked the way it mixed well with other herbs because of the flavor of it wasn't super green it's not bitter. It's just a flavor that seems to do well mixing with other herbs. And I found I felt really good. And as I'm sitting here talking about this, I'm kicking myself thinking, why haven't I been making more comfrey tea? I've got all this comfrey coming in and I keep forgetting. In fact, I hope I remember to do that today. As soon as I'm done here, go make myself some comfrey tea. I found that when I started drinking that, it just made me feel really good. So what is the tinker's wife says, my grandpa drank comfrey leaf tea every day, lived to just shy of 100. Okay, so all this fear mongering over comfrey internally is generally misplaced and nothing but a bunch of fear mongering, because comfrey is an amazing herb that most people can grow quite well. And as I mentioned earlier, has many benefits, can not just to your body, not just externally for healing wounds and rashes and helping to heal breaks and sprains, but used internally. Well, it's also great for your garden. And my chickens love it. If my chickens can get a hold of the comfrey, I don't mind because I've got a lot. In fact, when I think of it, I try to hack down some chunks and throw them in there for them to where they can get to them. And it's really good for them. So what I've come to understand that where you've got to be more careful when it comes to comfrey is the use of the root itself. Now, I had that video that just came out yesterday. I shot 6 weeks ago on the, natural healing testimonies. And there was somebody in there that was talking about using comfrey root on something, but I can't remember now what it was, but it was external use in that case. But it's the root that people have to be more careful of. But I haven't researched that one deeply. I do remember reading about it like a year or so ago, and I'm like, okay, people just hear comfrey and they make assumptions as like you can't eat any part of the plant or consume any part of the plant, or it's the root that you got to be careful of. But I don't think it necessarily means you can't use it internally at all, but you would need to do your own research on that to be certain. Question, which herbs do you like in tea with comfrey? Oh, pretty much anything. I mixed it with dandelion. I had a picture even. Dandelion and lemon balm. I've mixed it with peppermint, just whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, whatever I'm in the mood for. It seems like it blends well with any of them. Thyme would be good with thyme. Ooh, maybe I should do that. So, okay. So yeah, anyway, just understand that. Make sure that there's just been so much fear mongering due to misunderstandings. And yeah, there might be a lot of people doing videos saying, don't drink comfrey tea. Well, where did they get, don't ever take it internally. Where did they get their information? They might have got all their information from this one same source. And that's what you have to realize. Anytime you hear anything that you're unsure about, do deeper research, especially if it's just YouTube channels like mine just saying, oh, hey, I heard this, blah, blah, blah. Because I'm not any smarter than anyone else. I do try to really put into act, though, the things that I do. I try to practice and get some experience. I don't have a license, I don't have a certification, but I've been studying the benefits and uses of herbs since long before I started my channel. And, some people that get certified in herbs might only do a few month-long course, but this is something I've been studying for a long time. And then putting it into practice when I remember. So, but I also am not going to say I know everything. And to the person that has the certification and has done those special, has taken all the tests and stuff, they are very likely going to know things that I do not. I'm not saying I'm smarter than them, but it also doesn't make them smarter than you. You can learn this stuff just as easily as they did without having to pay the cost, unless you really want that piece of paper. So, with that said, I want to get on to the next point, and that was, how long do they hold their medicinal properties if you're going to dehydrate and store them? Now, I had somebody come in, and they were very nice. Don't get me wrong. They weren't putting me down. They were just telling me what they had heard, that a certain YouTube doctor that's a certified herbalist and knows everything, apparently. I've never watched him. I think I've heard his name many times, but I don't follow him. I don't know. This is nothing against him. It's definitely nothing against the very kind lady that made the comment in the first place. And she said that, well, Dr. Jones says that dried plantain loses its medicinal properties after 6 months. And silly me, when I first read it, I was reading it bright and early in the morning. My poor eyes. I saw 1 month for some reason. I don't know why. And I'm like, well, surely I know it definitely lasts longer than a single month. But, I have it in my head years. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe I should look into that and try to see what I can find. And I tried to look up specifically plantain. I cannot find anything that says the medicinal properties only last for 6 months. I do believe, though, a lot of it comes down to how you store it. So without hearing what exactly was said, there could be some context missing there. But everything I found when it comes to plantain or any herb, that if you're going to dehydrate it and store it, it can last usually a minimum of a year. And I believe if stored properly, it's going to last much longer than that. And I would say years, but this doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to use up what you have within a year and then keep cycling through. But me, I always like to make sure I'm a couple of years ahead, which is what spurred her comment, because I think I had said that. So, and here's the thing too. This is going to be applicable to anything you're going to preserve, is that whether it be your canned foods, your dehydrated foods, your dehydrated herbs, your frozen this and that, anything is going to eventually start to degrade over time. But that doesn't mean, or even store-bought stuff that has a, shelf life or, a date on it. It doesn't mean that when this date comes, Now it's gone from being very, very good to very, very bad, needs to be thrown out. It's a slow degrade over time when properly stored. So it's not like, okay, oh darn, I've had this plantain or this comfrey, this whatever dried and put up for, a year and a half now. There's nothing good left. I'm going to throw it all out. Not necessarily. I wouldn't say that. Or, it's been a year, got to throw it all out. I just think that's a little bit silly. But unfortunately, that's kind of the mentality we get. Oh, it's got 1 year shelf life. Okay, everything must go after a year. It's got a 6 month shelf life. Oh, got to dump it all out and start all over. Do I think you should rotate through your herbs and any of your foods that you've preserved in proper order? Yes. And I try to do that, though sometimes there are those jars that somehow slip out and end up somewhere else. I don't know how they do it. I don't know if they kind of sneak off and try to hide behind something, like the 2018 dehydrated green beans I had. I'm like, I still have some dehydrated green beans from 2018. No way. So I finally got those used up. But at any rate, yeah, obviously you should be working through those in proper order to get the most out of them. But I wouldn't be afraid of anything that you've put up and it's been properly stored for even 2 to 3 years, even the plantain. I'm not going to say I know this for an absolute 100% fact. I'm saying this from my own experience. I honestly believe you're still going to have some good medicinal properties and nutrients left in there. And here's something else, is that minerals, a lot of the medicinal properties of your different herbs come from, they're different things within the plant. It's the flavonoids, it's the alkaloids, it's the vitamins and the minerals, and all these different things are going to degrade at different speeds. One thing that you'll never lose are the minerals. It's always going to still have the minerals. So if you have something like nori or nettle or some other type of dark leafy green that tends to be higher in minerals, it's still going to retain those minerals. So yeah. And some of the medicinal properties are due to those very minerals that will never degrade. Let's see. Need to take Terry to the UPS store. You're going to run out on us again, I see. Tisk, tisk. We have been trained by expiration dates. Exactly. Let's see. Not saying that I'm old, but I remember when the only dates that were when the only dates were on dairy products. Exactly. And you're not old. Yeah. I've talked about this many times, but the expiration dates, well, a lot of people see dates on any like shelf stable food as expiration dates when that's not what they are. We just assume that's what they are. They're best buy dates, so that you will throw those out and run out and buy more once that date's gone. It doesn't mean it's spoiled. If it's shelf stable and it hasn't lost a seal, it's still shelf stable. Like that box milk that's supposed to last a year or two. I had it in there for years. I finally did work through all of it. I used some of it to make ice cream, which the taste was still really good. But the weird thing was that the ice cream wouldn't harden up. Oh, that's not what I'm trying to say. It stayed too soft for too long in the ice cream maker, where usually it gets it doesn't harden, but you know what I mean, where it gets thicker, and it wouldn't really do that in the ice cream maker. And it did eventually in the freezer. So I was thinking, is there something wrong with my bowl? Maybe my bowl isn't freezing good enough. No, when I went back and then I thought maybe it had a hole in it or something. Well, so then after I used up the last of the box milk, I made the next batch of ice cream, just doing it the regular way with the whole cream, the whipping cream and the milk, the whole milk. And yeah, no problem. Just like normal. So it was all about the box milk. So I thought that was strange. Why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it freeze up the same? That's weird. But the taste was good and it set up good enough in the freezer. Okay, so let's talk about the best ways to store those herbs. My personal opinion, and then also when I was looking into, okay, let's see if I can find information on how shelf stable dried herbs are. Guess what the best way to store them are? And I don't think I've ever read this, but it's exactly the way that I do it. And that is storing in glass jars and vacuum sealing them. Now, I've always said that, your herbs aren't going to spoil if they come unsealed, but I still vacuum seal them because I honestly believe that the vacuum sealing will also help preserve the properties of those herbs for a much longer time than not vacuum sealing. And some ways to tell would be, how much have they faded in color? And this can be easy to tell when you start drying herbs in, the new herbs. So we're in that time of the year. I'm dehydrating herbs, and I can see a difference in color from the newer ones to the older ones. Color tells me that if the color's faded, it's probably lost some of its potency and some of its nutrient value. I would think that would be a good thing to go by. Smell, flavor is it lost a lot of of the aroma and the flavor as well. And when I say that, I mean a lot of times when you dehydrate herbs, they lose a lot of their flavor and aroma anyway. So you would have to go by the way it tasted and smelled right after it was dehydrated, and then compare that, or compare it to like a fresh batch you just dehydrated in the old batch. These are all ways that you can get an idea if there's, how far along are we here? Do I still believe there's nutrient value left in some that have kind of lost a little bit of their color, taste, and smell? Yes. But it's very likely not going to be as much as the fresh stuff that you just put up. And but anyway, by vacuum sealing into jars, you can really extend that shelf life of the nutrient value, flavor, and aroma of whatever it is that you're putting up. That goes for anything, not just herbs. Okay, so vacuum sealing into glass jars, in my personal opinion, absolute best way to preserve dried herbs. You can freeze your fresh herbs, but freezing is going to have it might preserve some things better than dehydrating, but it's also going to degrade some things better than dehydrating, or degrade things that dehydrating would preserve. That's what I meant to say. So they all have their benefits. And then when it comes to starting herbs, this is the last point. When it comes to starting herbs, another question I get along, how do you start it? How do you get it to grow for you? Well, I tell you the one thing that I've always done anytime I'm starting a new herb, especially one I've never grown, and definitely do this with echinacea. Now, well, especially around here, a lot of things just don't do good if you just, when it comes to herbs, just throwing seed into the ground. Always does best if you start them in a very controlled area, whether it be inside or in a greenhouse, in small pots, anywhere where it's going to stay a little warmer. I mean, and again, you got to remember, I'm talking about where I live, okay, in a cooler climate. So, like echinacea, I never get echinacea plants that come up from seed that's fallen, ever. And there's a lot of herbs that grow around here that, calendula, on a rare occasion, I might get a new plant from a seed that fell, but that's very rare. Nasturtiums, I'm more apt to get some new plants coming up from seeds that have fallen, depending on where they were growing, because I do have some coming up on their own out in this one section, but most of the time that's not the case. So I usually still will start nasturtiums. I don't start them in the greenhouse because they don't need that much warmth, but I'll start them in a more controlled area outside in pots where they're going to stay more protected from those spring freezes or really, really cold times that we have, but still give it a chance to start growing. And so, and then the echinacea, I always start inside. And in fact, my echinacea I started in the house this year just wasn't doing great. So I thought I'm going to start all over with fresh seed. I'm going to start it in the greenhouse now that it's plenty warm in there and it stays plenty warm in there. And those are doing really good. And I'm not moving them out of there until actually I did move one out yesterday and I forgot to check on it and see how it's doing. If it looks good, I'm going to move another one out. And still, I'm only going to grow them in pots for another year before putting them in the ground because around here, one thing I found about echinacea is if you put it in the ground too soon, it won't do well. And the slugs tend to like it too. And slugs are very problematic around here. And no, please don't tell me about beer and dishes. Doesn't work. Okay. There. I said my little spiel about the beer and dishes. So yeah, for me personally, starting indoors or in the greenhouse with most of them is the best way if you've never tried it before. And then it feels like it's getting too hot in the greenhouse or it's warming up enough outside. Even then, I will typically transfer them to a bigger pot and watch them for a while. And I found this is the best way for me to be able to finally get herbs like the arnica and the marshmallow that each took me several years to get to grow from seed. And now I've got marshmallow and arnica coming out my ears. But I love beer soup. Cold stars for all of us. Are you talking about the little? Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. Catching up on comments here. Okay. So yeah, you got to find what works best for you, but really for me that has been for most of the things that I've tried to start. That's been the best way for me to do it. And then you just got to watch your stuff and see how it does. So, yeah, but I do think it's starting to get too warm in the greenhouse for me to keep those young echinaceas in there for long. So I'm trying to carefully find some areas to move them to, but only in pots, not into the ground, not until next year when they come back. And then very, very carefully move them into, I've already got some places picked out that I think will be best for them, where once I get them established, I think they'll keep coming back and I won't have to worry about them. Like the one remaining one in the back garden here. There was a time I had a whole bunch of those plants and just, yeah. Anyway. So, okay. That was it for that topic. I have one more. And though I was thinking this one might be long, I'm hoping it's not going to. I want to try to get through this somewhat quickly. I'm going to show for anyone who's come in, they're getting wilty now. Look at my plantain leaf. I've been getting quite a few this big. Look at this thing. Look at it. It's huge. So yeah, I get a lot of plantain leaves that big in certain areas, not in all the areas, but in certain areas. They're really, really happy. And that surprised some people. Okay. I'm going to finally get to this topic that I've been putting off and then forgetting because I don't know why it makes me so nervous. But I did go back. Okay, let me just say what it's about. So this is, I still don't know what I'm going to title it when I make my standalone video, but it's basically, dealing with the Epstein-Barr virus and the reactivation of it. Because ever since COVID, I've been going through it several different times. So the first time I know I was sick with it was back in 2012. And then got over that, was fine. It took months and months and months to get past the fatigue of it. And that was good up until 2021 when I got COVID. And the COVID part of it was no big deal, really. But it did cause me to get an activated case of Epstein-Barr virus, again, also known as EBV. Now, what I did do under this live and what I'm going to do under the standalone video is in the description box down below, I linked to the Rumble video that I did on this topic. And the reason I'm linking only to the Rumble is because I never put it on YouTube, because a lot of the things I talked about in that video, especially back then when I shot it, could have got me in a lot of trouble on YouTube. So, and I still don't feel comfortable about talking about all that here, but I hadn't listened to it in a long time. And so I thought, I need to listen to this. I want to hear what I said. And I'm like, I have a lot of good information in here. I had even forgotten about some of the stuff that I had, some of the links that I had made in my studies. I'm like, oh my goodness, I had forgotten all about this. I'm like, wow, I put a lot of time and information into this. So I highly, highly recommend that everybody check that out. I'm not saying everything's right, but I did provide links to actual .gov NIH websites, NIH.gov publications that would back up the things that I was saying. The things that people wouldn't even bother to look on, you'd get fact checked if you tried to share it, even though it was right there on the .gov websites. But again, I don't want to get too deep into it because that's not really the purpose of this. But what I do need to say, for those of you who've never heard of the Epstein-Barr virus or think it doesn't have anything to do with you and it's not going to affect you, I'm going to say chances are 95% that you are wrong, and probably 100% if that's what you believe. And the reason I say that is that a minimum of 95% of the worldwide population of all adults all around the world have been infected with the Epstein-Barr virus sometime in their life, and they probably don't know it, because most people, when they get infected with it, it goes immediately into just being latent. Or if you had any symptoms, they were probably maybe even mild to start with. If you've ever had mono, you've been infected with Epstein-Barr virus. That's basically what mono is. Mono is basically the activated form of the Epstein-Barr virus. And that's why I think it's really a misnomer to call mono the kissing disease, because 95% of the world's population has it and doesn't know it. So when you start learning about the history of where this possibly came from, or at least where they discovered it, and it was on cancer cells back in 1966 by Epstein and Barr, thus the name, there's a lot of interesting things about that. And again, I cover that in that video. I was actually surprised at how thorough I was when I was listening to it again yesterday. I'm like, wow, I was a lot more thorough than I remember. So now let's get down to the fact that because Epstein-Barr virus it's not a curable disease. There's no cure for it, at least. There's no vaccine for it, which is so interesting that there's not one for that. But hey, in just a short period of time, we can create something for a brand new virus that came out of nowhere, supposedly, in just a few months. But they never created one for this. And yet so few people, when you've got a minimum of 95% of the worldwide population of adults and 50% of all children by the age of 5, I think it is, are infected with it. And once you're infected with it, it stays in the body. It hides out in there. And anything can set it off. Some of those anythings can be getting a certain virus that happened around 2020. It can be dealing with the death of a loved one. It could be any kind of very stressful situation in your life, which I find it interesting that certain virus did set it off in many people, because a lot of people have dealt with this and got all kinds of different viruses, but it didn't cause Epstein-Barr to be activated. Why? Why is this? What made the 2020 virus different? It was actually 2019 virus, but 2020 was when it was the big, really, everything just blew up. So those are some questions to ask. But with that said, It's one of those things that makes me sad, and both sad and angry that so few people know about it, and it's not talked about, and it's not talked about how to take care of yourself when you're dealing with it. So let me read a couple comments here. See, I feel for you, everyone else that deals with this. It's horrible. Yeah, you can't talk about pine extract. That's the other thing. Got it at 14 years old and was mortified at the time when people kept asking me who I was kissing. I was a super shy kid. And that's the thing. I think I figured out who I got it from, maybe. And I share this in that video, but I'll share it real quickly. Is that I know there was a mom that had her daughter in dance and she had it. I could tell when she walked in one day that she felt like I felt. And well, her little girl was in dance and she was one of those little girls like stick her fingers in her mouth and da da da. You know how many little slobbery fingers I had to grab and help them? It's like, helping them across the room to learn their step. And all it took is probably me doing something like that, getting that little bit of lint or eyelash out of my eye. That's the only thing I can think of. It's not that hard to get. Okay. It doesn't have to go as far as kissing. So yes, it's carried on, moisture, right? Usually saliva, and that's why it gets that name. What if somebody sneezed and then put their hand on something, and then you came along and touched that same thing shortly after? It's not that hard for these things like that to spread. Of course, this is why, the washing of hands, especially whenever you go anywhere anymore, is important. I do think that is a good thing. Let's see. Same stressors that can trigger herpes simplex. Well, and here's the thing too. I did write this down. I want to read this correctly because it is a herpes virus. So it is human herpes virus 4. So a lot of people think, herpes, they hear that and they think, oh, they always think of an STD, but there's a lot of herpes type virus, chicken pox, shingles. Okay. They're not, but they're all things that can become latent in the body. Not all of them, but a lot of your herpes type viruses will become latent and anything can activate it. So what I want to share is I've been feeling really good, other than whatever it is I did to my back that I can't seem to heal. It feels like a pulled muscle and I start getting better and then I hurt it again. But other than that, I've got my energies back. The body fatigue is gone. But every time it comes back, it's so frustrating. And thank the Lord, I've been able to get better in time to really get out there and do the work in my garden, because I was worried. We're starting to get into gardening season. I'm like, how am I going to be able to do this with this body fatigue? So I want to share with you a little bit about some of the things I've been doing. So one of the things you got to understand is that, well, it is a virus, Epstein-Barr virus. So you start looking at your various antivirals. And I've got a video that I didn't think to link under the live, but I'll link to under the video when I do the standalone. And that is my video. And maybe Deb, she's been so helpful. She doesn't mind looking to find the most recent video I did on the list of antivirals. There might only be one out there because I think I had to remove the other one, or it got removed by YouTube because one of the antivirals I mentioned in there was a taboo subject. Probably the same. It was either the same thing that I keep in here or the one that comes from Pine. I don't remember. But I'm pretty sure it was this. So this is one of the things I've been using to help me, but I can't talk about it. So, but I can tell you at least that it is a precious metal that has been made into a colloid. It's the one that's sort of gray in color rather than gold. Maybe that'll help. So, anyway, but yeah, because of that, the video either I ended up having to remove it before I got a strike on my channel, or it got removed. I don't remember which. But anyway, so I had that list of antivirals that I did, I think a year ago or so. And so some of those things I know are going to be like a lot of things that you can grow. Your rosemary is a great antiviral, um, and antibiotic as well. I know nasturtium leaf is great antibiotic, but now I'm trying to remember if it's a good antiviral. But other things like a lot of your spices, your hot peppers, your ginger, turmeric, and I mean, the list is long. And that's why I didn't really want to get into all of that because you can go to that list that I have. And yeah, so I think I even typed the list up as well to make it easy. So a lot of it's trying to find ways to get more of that in various different ways whenever my throat, because a lot of times the throat thing is, if you got a sore throat or bumps at the back of your throat, that's a result of that. And this is why I like to have this in a spray, either this or the elderberry tincture. I was using a lot of that because elderberry is also a great antiviral. And so that would also help numb the throat and make it feel better, but also help with the virus. Okay, thanks, Deb. Appreciate that. So, and then also knowing, let me look. I got to keep looking because I'm afraid I'm going to miss something important. And then also adding your different, greens that are really high in nutrients. So very nutrient dense greens, such as the nori, which is again not something I grow because I don't have an ocean in my garden. This is the one I get. I get it from Amazon, Subscribe and Save. And I really like this one. Jace loves this. He thinks this is a snack. He'll just eat a whole sheet to himself with nothing on it. But and nori is just one of the different types of sea vegetables. Any sea vegetable, really. I don't like kelp. I haven't tried many others, or I don't know if I've tried any others, but nori and kelp. But I really like nori. And so I started doing that, eating a couple sheets of that every day, when I was going through the worst part of it with the fatigue and all. And then also making sure that with my greens blend that I already make and use in pretty much every meal, that I be more conscientious about what's going in my greens blend and not just throwing all greens in there, but trying to focus on the ones I know my body needs most. So I was also basically powdering up some nori and mixing that in there because the nori is going to have the iodine in it. And then like the nettle and the dandelion leaves, very, very nutrient dense, throwing those in there. And also now the lovage because of the high quercetin content in lovage leaves. So those are the 4 main greens now. Instead of like 10 different greens, those are the 4 main ones I'm focusing on in my mixed greens. So I can add that to anything and get those nutrients out of there. Because one of the things I was learning is that getting all those necessary minerals in every way that you can is going to be one of the things that's really going to help you to recover and to get through it. And knowing this is going to be helpful also for me in the future, because now that it looks like there's a pattern here, I start feeling that way again. I know what to start throwing at it. Then the other thing was the turkey tail mushroom. And we get, sometimes we have a year where we can get just a great amount of turkey tail mushrooms just down at our other piece of property. Some years there's nothing. So we do have that, and I make a tincture. So I was taking the tincture every morning, taking a little bit of that. And then also I started buying even though I still have a lot of the other mushroom, I'm still trying to, since I never know from year to year if I'm going to be able to get any, I also started buying, the light's terrible. But anyway, this is called Pure. It was the best price I could find on it. Initially, I was getting it for the dog, for Luna, and adding it to her food to help with her lipomas. And it's really, really working. They're still there, but some went away pretty quickly. Some of the more stubborn ones are taking longer, but it is helping to shrink them by just mixing some in with her food. But every morning I take a teaspoon of this and mix it in with my coffee. So I'm getting that. I was taking the turkey tail. I'm still doing this. And I probably should get back to taking the tincture too, especially since my throat's been bothering me again. But really felt like there's some major changes, by leaps and bounds when I started incorporating these various things. The other things that I did was those are the times that I would take really look at taking your supplements. Sorry, I'm stuttering so much because I'm having other thoughts come through my mind because I'm also remembering the Brazil nuts because of the high selenium content, or eggs. Egg yolks have a lot of selenium in them. And so getting that good nutrient, that those are some good ways to get it that isn't going to be as expensive as taking supplements. But sometimes, as I say, though, I think we shouldn't always be dependent on supplements. There are going to be times in our lives when we're dealing with things like this that throwing some extra supplements at it can be necessary and very, very helpful. So for me, what I started doing was um, this one is called bulk supplements. I don't know if it's really the best, but I bought a few of theirs. But the alpha lipoic acid, wherever you choose to get it in capsule form, I started taking this. This is going to, if you have fibromyalgia, alpha lipoic acid is one of the things that can be very helpful. And it is an amino acid. So I started taking that. And then the rest of these I get from Azure Standard. 3 of them are Azure Well brand. So the B complex, taking one of those a day. The whole food C complex, these are definitely more expensive than just buying ascorbic acid. But I was taking this for a while. I was taking them twice a day. I'm not taking these now because I don't feel like I need them now. So especially because of the price, I only take I kept taking, so little by little, I started when I started feeling better, I started cutting some of these one at a time until I got down to, well, oh, I grabbed this isn't one of the ones, but Alaskan cod liver oil. I think I grabbed it because I saw it was an Azure Well. I just got that and I take it every once in a while, but that's not what I was taking it for. And this one is not an Azure Well, but I do get it from Azure, and it is what's the name of it? Garden of Life vitamin code raw D3. This has actually been the best D3 I've ever taken. And it's very different. It's not in the gel form. It looks like this. It's green and it's in a capsule. And I was taking Now D3 for a long time, but then for some reason it seemed like it just went. I don't know if they changed the formula, if it was just me, but I know this one has definitely been working better for me. I can tell because of the way my hair reacts. When I'm not getting enough D, my hair starts falling out. If I get too much, it starts falling out. I have to have a good balance. And this seems to be, if I'm going to take a D3, this one is definitely the thing. Now, I didn't take any today because now that I'm getting a lot more sun, I'm not taking any of the supplements because I try to limit that, partly because of cost, but also just trying to weigh out and go by how I feel. I've been feeling pretty good. Exhausted today, though, because of the grandbabies yesterday wore me out. But the other things like the turkey tail mushroom, all those more natural things that you can take as a food, the nori and the Brazil nuts, I'll keep doing those. But I did find when I started incorporating all these things, it seemed like finally I started getting better and getting over that body fatigue a lot faster. And so these are some different things that you can do when that flares up. Let me see if I wrote anything down here. Oh, I did list a few other antivirals in here, like ashwagandha is another really good one for this, echinacea, and I did say the rosemary and elderberry. But also, making sure you're doing the best you can to get good sleep. Get in the sun when you can unless you're very, very fair or you're only out there for a few minutes if you're very fair. I say don't wear sunblock. Sunblock can be really bad for you. I never wear sunblock. And when the sun's out, I try to get out in it. In fact, I'd like to get my hand watering done early in the morning, but the problem with that is the sun isn't hitting all the gardens when I'm doing that. So I wait until the sun is hitting the gardens so that when I'm out there watering, I'm in the sun. In fact, I got to go out and pick some raspberries, and I'm going to be in the sun in a tank top so I can get as much sun exposure on my skin as possible to help get more vitamin D. And then drinking plenty of good, clean water. Trying to avoid all that fluoride because that's not going to help. So if you're on city tap water and it's fluoridated, I suggest finding another way. Fluoride filters can be expensive. This was the number one reason why we started doing a rainwater catchment and then filtering that, because we at least knew there was no fluoride in there. And that was one of the things that helped us be able to go off of our thyroid medication. But anything that's going to weaken your immune system, like fluoride and getting rid of the Teflon pans, things like that. So good, clean water. And yeah, no sunglasses. I used to always wear sunglasses. And I find it's actually better to not wear sunglasses. You should never look directly at the sun anyway, but we are made to have that sun exposure on our eyes. Okay. And it can actually help with your eyesight. And yeah, I think one of the worst things was all these really, really strong sunblocks. And I think that caused way more problems for people than just getting natural sun exposure. And obviously, if you're very fair, you got to be careful about how much sun exposure you're getting. And just, yeah. It's interesting that on YouTube has a commercial on that particular metal. It seems like I saw something about that. And it was Patrick said, what was that commercial? I can't remember. Patrick goes, oh, they can talk about it, but you can't. And I'm like, yeah, apparently. So I know what you're talking about. I just can't remember what exactly it was. But yeah, see, they get good money from the ads, yet they don't get good money from the pharmaceutical ads when they have people talking about things that actually work so you don't have to take the pharmaceuticals. This is why things like that particular substance, did I say it? I might have said it without even thinking, and certain other things are not allowed to be talked about. And I go into depth about some of that in that very video I'm talking about on Rumble. Again, I highly recommend you guys watch. Just keep in mind, there are several minutes in the beginning where I'm talking because I was just, again, so nervous about talking about it. So I was I kind of probably went on too long about why I was so scared to talk about it. But also the picture is very jumpy. I was having a lot of issues with my movie editor for some reason back then. And I didn't catch that sometimes I could fix it somehow and get it to stop jumping around by doing a full reboot. But apparently I didn't do that. So it looks like I have a whole bunch of jump cuts and that's not what's going on. It's that I don't know. It was doing that to me a lot. It was so irritating. It happens every now and then still now, but at least most of the time, I haven't seen any of my newer videos because I got an upgraded version. Some things are worse, but at least that's fixed. Okay, so plenty of sun, sleep, water, fresh air. And I think, and getting exercise as you're able. Obviously, if you're in the middle of dealing with the severe body fatigue, obviously you got to be careful about what you do. You don't want to wear yourself out even more. But I think by trying to get some kind of movement, that whatever you can do, I think is going to be very helpful. I mean, exercise can be a very natural thing. We always talk about exercise and people picture, oh, I got to start lifting weights or I got to go for a run. Nope. Here's something I did the other day. This was a really good form of exercise. And the funny thing, I was wondering why my upper back muscles were so darn sore. I'm like, I do. My upper back muscles are so sore. Did I pull something? And then I was so thrilled when I remembered what it was I'd done. I'm like, oh, it's a good sore. It's a good kind of sore. Well, I had that kiddie pool out there and I wanted to empty out that water. Like this is perfect water for watering the garden because all the chlorine's going to be baked out by the sun and everything. And I don't want to just empty it and let all that water go to waste. So I have this big plastic pitcher. It's pretty sure it holds at least a gallon. And I keep that out there just for stuff like this. And I scoop that water up, walk out to all the different areas around my garden and was dumping it in a lot of the areas that like my sprinkler. I have a couple places where I have sprinklers. I can just turn them on, but there's a lot of areas that I have to hand water as well. And so, and I, and the pool is up on the deck. So I got to come up onto the deck, scoop the water, walk out to wherever. And some of it was a bit of a distance, come back and do it again, carrying that and then dumping it and doing that over and over and over again. And I'm like, some people would probably think this is a really big waste of time. And I'm thinking, I'm saving water, I'm watering my plants, and I'm getting exercise at the same time by walking back and forth and carrying this heavy pitcher of water. It was great. And I'm going to do it again when I go to empty it again. I can't do all of the water that way, but I do get a good amount of the water out of the pool just doing that. So, yeah. What was to say here? Heidi, do you have an air purifier in your house? We do in our bedroom. It's not running right now. I only really use it right now. We actually do have a little air conditioner in our bedroom. Um, it was kind of a long series of events, but I'm like, my son accidentally bought the wrong air conditioner by mistake. And so I said, and then he realized too late and he couldn't cancel the order. So I said, oh, well, your dad's birthday's coming up. I'll just buy it for him for his birthday because I know he has a really hard time sleeping when it gets hot. And I think that would be a great idea. So it's just a little small window one and it works good. And I think he's been able to sleep a little better, on these when it gets hot. So I'm not running the air purifier when that's running because that does have at least a somewhat of a filter and that I got to clean out at least once a week. But anyway, that was kind of a side issue. Let me double check. Let's see. Nori dandelion leaves, nettle for mineral content. I mentioned the supplements. But yeah, lots of vitamin C, as much as you can get. The one thing that's great about vitamin C is you can get too much, but it's not as much of a concern because your body will flush it out and you'll know because just like when you eat too many cherries or anything like that, it has the same effect. So, but yeah, as natural as you can be able to get a lot of stuff, but sometimes it takes quite a bit of eating certain fruits and vegetables to get what your body needs when you're trying to heal it. So that is where supplementation, I think, does definitely have its place. And it doesn't mean you have to take it for here and ever after. It just means at least during the flare ups, this can be a good way to help you recover faster. And then keep focusing on learning more about other foods that are high in nutrients that you can start adding to your diet to get the minerals and other nutrients that your body needs. If you're like me and you can't take iron and you shouldn't take iron because you're thalassemic, then, sometimes you got to watch certain things. Certain foods are really high in iron you may want to avoid. I don't worry about that really as much when it's in a natural form. Because when your nutrients are in their more natural form rather than singled out, I mean, this is why I like B complex because at least it's in the full complex form. But still, some of these things, when they're singled out, you can really be missing some other nutrients that they really need to be combined with. Like people talk about vitamin D3 should be taken with vitamin K. Unfortunately, vitamin K supplements are pretty much worthless. So making sure that you're eating vegetables and foods that are naturally high in your K2, even K1, which a lot of your greens are high, have a lot of K1 in them. There's a lot of greens that do. And K2, just like D3, typically can only come from um, animal products, if I remember correctly. So, at any rate, these are some of the things you got to consider. Okay, well, I guess that was it. That wasn't that hard. I don't know why I get so nervous about it. I guess it is because of the what the topic is, and it kind of is just sort of, you know, brushing that line a little bit of what's allowed and what's not allowed, and with the ever changing rules on YouTube, you never really know if you're going to say something and it's going to be the wrong thing and you're going to get in trouble. Thankfully, I haven't gotten in trouble in a while. It's been quite a while, but I never know when I might slip and say something I shouldn't, or say something that I didn't know suddenly became a taboo topic. But yeah, there are certain things within this topic that, yeah, I have to be very careful with, which is again why I want to remind people to go check out that Rumble video I did. I did it I looked like it said 3 years on there, but I'm like, no, that would have been more like 4 years ago that I did that. So, yeah, go check that out. And I think you'll learn quite a bit. You might find it interesting. You might just want to skip through like the first 5 minutes, unless you want to just hear me talking about how this topic was really difficult and here's why. And some of it too with me, I'm always afraid that maybe I'm not giving enough information. Maybe I didn't do as much studying as I hoped, but like I said, I was a lot more thorough than I remembered on the things that I covered about Epstein-Barr virus and the COVID virus and cancer. All three of those very closely linked. So anyway, well, I hope, let me see, what time is it? Oh, it's only 1:45. Let me see if there's any interesting comments, and then maybe I should get going, because I do want to get outside and get some stuff done out there. See, Heidi, I love your work. Thanks for being brave enough to share. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. My husband and I always laugh when pharma ads give you the list of possible side effects, which are always worse than what they are trying to cure. Same. And then while they're listing off all these horrible side effects, the people are running and dancing and laughing and swimming and just all the fun stuff. They're all so happy and healthy. Really? Yeah, did anybody ever watch Joe Somebody with oh darn, there goes my brain again. Tim? Whatever. That guy. Anyway, there's that part where they're showing this commercial for some kind of drug, and it's the same thing. And the list of side effects is actually quite hilarious. But anyway, see, my worry about sunblock is the chemicals adding to your body. Exactly. Skin is like your biggest organ of the body, and anything you put on your skin gets absorbed into your bloodstream. So, yeah. Burns damage, but exposure is vital. And then, like Peggy said, though, that a lot of those sunblocks damage too. Though I did do a video several years ago. I remember sitting out on deck. This was a long time ago, about natural sun protection. And guess what? Okay, first of all, let's just stop and think. Do we really believe the children of Israel, as they're wandering in the wilderness and all that sun, were carrying their SPF 15, 20, 50 around with them? I don't think so. Guess one of the best ways to protect your skin from getting burned. It's what you put in your body. It's your diet. That's one of the first things. And then obviously wearing appropriate clothing so you're not getting too much sun exposure. But it can be as simple as that. But excuse me. There are also topical natural things you can use. Even coconut oil on its own has a SPF of, what was it? I think I say in that video, of like 10. Shea butter has some. Maybe it's not 10. But shea butter has some. I think raspberry seed oil, I think it was one of them. That's actually one of the highest. Was it raspberry? I don't know. I say in that video. I don't remember because I don't remember because I don't use any of that stuff either. Well, I shouldn't say that because there is coconut oil and shea butter in my skin cream that goes on my face every single day and on my throat and sometimes on my hands. But I don't use that for the sun protective factor. I use it for everything else. Okay. What else here? Interesting. Okay, I read that. Okay, I'm just scrolling to see if there's anything. Oh, this is where that topic came up. Oh, yeah. Okay, you were asking what this was I just showed. Yeah, one of those things I can't talk about, but it's okay for YouTube to have put commercials about it or something similar on people's videos. It's okay for them to do it. What is it? Rules for thee, but not for me. What shea brand buttered? Or shea brand butter, shea butter brand. There's I've had a few different kinds. Some you can find some organic ones on Amazon that are pretty good. There's a company I do get mine from because I get a pretty good price, but people get mad when I mention it, so I won't bring that one up. But let's see, was it Essential Depot has some? There was another company I was getting it from on Amazon. It had it in bags that looked kind of like this. They're kind of like a paper bag that were lined with something. I don't remember the brand, but I was getting that for a while. That was pretty good. I just say whatever you can find for a decent price. I try to look for organic, but I don't know with shea butter if it really matters that it's labeled organic because of where it comes from. I did a video on shea butter, by the way, and its benefits. And I may have talked about some different places you can buy it. I don't recall, but I talk about where it comes from. I do sell my skin cream. I've been selling my skin cream for years. It's one of the few things like that I make that I sell. I don't sell anything that I would label as medicinal. Like I don't sell any of my tinctures. I don't sell my healing salve. None of that. I get asked about this stuff all the time, but I do sell the skin cream and I have sold, I don't know how many tins of skin cream in the past, maybe 10 years. A lot. A lot. And still making and selling it. So if you're interested, just email me at raincountryhomestead@gmail.com and I'll shoot you out the product list that has the prices, the shipping, how to pay, etc. Since I shut my Etsy store down a couple of years ago and got rid of that beast. So, and I won't ever go back there. I think they're trying to get me to come back. And it's like, no, not happening, jerks. So I even did a video on why I left Etsy. Let's see here. I love the big sun hat. Okay. Well, maybe I should probably get going and let you guys get going because I'm sure, like me, you've got a long list of stuff to do. Of course, you guys probably have it easier because you can still get stuff done while you're listening. I got to sit here. I don't mind it. I don't mind sitting here. It's my reprieve for the day. Oh, shea butter at Azure. I haven't thought to look on there. Thank you for bringing that up. If I have looked, I can't remember if their price was any better than where I've been getting it, but Azure's been getting more and more of that kind of stuff in. So they're also a great place to look. Just like, I do think their supplements are pretty high quality, but they are not cheap. However, if you buy, if you can afford to buy like a 3-pack, like I did with these, they don't sell the vitamin D3 because that's not their brand in a 3-pack, but the B complex they sell in a 3-pack, the Alaskan cod liver oil they sell in the 3-pack. It does save, and sometimes if you watch, they'll have sales on these, and you can get a little bit better price on them. But they're not cheap. But they're one of those that I think are worth it because I do honestly believe they're high quality, especially when I see how well they've helped me. So, okay, a couple more comments I'll read. See, when my granddaughters were all young, I bought a lot of hats and silk flowers for them to decorate. Then we went to a you pick strawberry place with our hats. Oh, they had a blast, and the woman at the farm took their picture for her page. I love that. Yes, Halal Every Day is the place I was getting where I often get a lot of my products, like the shea butter, because I don't know if they still do. I usually just buy like a bulk of the shea butter and the beeswax from them because their price is really good, and I can use my own link and get a discount. All you got to do is I was making a little bit of commission off the sales, but you can still use that. I think I can't remember what it is. It might just be Rain Country is the discount code. I use my own discount code, and I think I saves 15%. But I stopped talking about it because people got all bent out of shape because they don't truly understand what halal means. They think they know what it means. And so I get people that want to lecture me about that. Yet they're the same persons that will get mad at me about why I don't eat pork, even though I'm not telling them not to eat pork. So it's like, hello? Maybe do a little more research before you start judging people. But that's why I just don't talk about it anymore, because it gets some people want to send me these long-winded emails and lecture me about it. And it's like, well, I for a long time didn't even know what halal meant. It was a brand name, Halal Every Day. I hardly even paid attention to what it said. I just found it with the black seed oil initially, and then found that they had a separate company, and they're based in the US, and they had some really good prices. That's all I knew at first until people started getting mad at me. And so I started looking it up and learning more about it. And I'm like, well, I guess you got to understand more what it means. I will say this. They don't sell any meat products. It's all plant-based products. So there's that. And also, just to make it very simple, a very simple explanation. And so when it comes to a lot of stuff, basically all it means is that it's kosher. But there's not going to be any pork products in it. There's not going to be any shrimp products in it and things like that. That's basically all it means. But and if you're worried about meat sacrificed unto idols, well, that's meat. And if they're sacrificing their meat to idols, well, I'm not eating that meat. So, but yeah, that's funny to me, where people are really, really worried about that one, but then want to also lecture me about me being wrong about not choosing not to eat pork and shellfish and catfish and rabbit and etc. It's like, why are you getting so mad? I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm just, people ask, I share. Don't get mad. And rewatching. Oh, I appreciate that. Oh, let me share with you guys one more thing. This is definitely more serious. Every time, I do enjoy doing my faith-based videos, but every time that I do, initially they're pretty well received, but then the hate will start coming. It's not that much, really, though, in the grand scheme of things. I get far more people that are positive, and I appreciate that so much. There's just going to be those few people that get bent out of shape. But then after even dealing with those, usually the next day, I will be exhausted and depressed. It's almost like I feel, and I know some people are going to think this sounds crazy, but I often feel like I'm under spiritual attack. I really, really do. It just I get so depressed the very next day after a video like that comes out. And the first day I might be feeling pretty good. It's like, "Oh, good. I'm so glad that people are even this person here who didn't agree, they were so nice about it. I appreciated that." I don't mind people disagreeing. It's when they turn into absolute jerks or get mad at you for it. But I don't think it's so much those people. I think that contributes to that depression I get, but it kind of you see this, though, you'll see this in the Bible too. There were people that when something great happened, they would end up going into a depression. And I'm not to compare myself to anyone great in the Bible. Oh, I'm not doing that, but I think about that often. Was it Elijah that went through that depression afterwards, after the whole, the fire and and I'm certainly no Elijah. That is for darn sure. But I do think there is something to be said about that when we start really making steps and being in our faith and really growing and maybe even hopefully sharing a message that brings people some kind of hope or joy or anything that it just seems pretty common that we then may the very next day or the next week go through this kind of valley. And I suppose that's okay. We just got to remember who to go back to and not let it break us. So friends, we need to lift our I thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yes. Yes. It is kind of a battle and I always forget until after I'm right in the middle of it going, "Man, why do I feel this way?" And then I remember, "Oh, I feel like something was kind of successful and maybe that's why." I don't know. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. I didn't want to do it in a regular YouTube video on my other channel, but yeah, I could always use prayer when I talk about anything biblical, anything about my faith, because it's the same pattern every time. And my guess is probably a lot of people go through the same thing. Maybe everybody goes through the same thing. It's the only assumption I can make. I don't think it's just me, but or maybe it is me. Maybe I am taking some things harder than I think I am. But I know this, that where I've come, I used to be the one that would just kind of frown at people that would say some of the things I say now and think, "Oh, they don't understand their Bible," or, "Oh, they're wrong," or blah, 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 and even kind of get a little mad myself because I thought I was right until I really started delving into the scriptures and what they actually said and reading it within context from Genesis to Revelation. Not just this little story or this little verse taken out of context or even changed, but Genesis to Revelation. And the more I keep going through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, the more I'm like, it becomes it becomes clear and obvious. And I'm thinking, how is it we strayed so far from what Scripture says? And so that's why I always say to anyone, just I don't want to I don't want to ever sound like I think I'm better than any other Christian because I'm not. I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and we all should be. We should never reach a point, just like with the herbs, we should never reach a point in our faith where we think we know it all because there's a lot of bad things that can happen. We're going to get prideful, okay? And pride is at the root of all sin. We start looking down on others and treating people terribly. I mean, the, yeah, I've been treated that way from both sides of this issue. Um, Back when I was still eating pork and somebody came in there and just started bashing me because, well, I mean, they didn't say these words, but I can't remember their exact wording, but they might as well have just said, "Well, I'm better than you because you eat pork." It was so cruel and just prideful and rude. And I never want to be that person. It was because it was people like that said, "I don't want to have anything to do with these people if this is the way they are." But it took God having to show me in his own word what he really said. And again, that's me. I'm not trying to tell people what to do or what to eat or that they should be like me. I just think if we really, really trust God and we really believe, then we should always be going back to his word, reading the entire thing within context, all of it, cover to cover. Remember, we don't pick up a book. Oh, look, I just checked this book. It's a folder. I just checked this book out from the library. I'm going to start reading right here instead of right here. But we also don't just read from the front page to the middle of it and stop, do we? No, we read it clear to the end, all the way to the very end. Because how are we going to know the whole story if we're not reading the full thing? And that's where we miss a lot. Got to have the whole story, the whole thing within context. You're better than me. My breakfast tastes better. Really? Hey, I like my beef bacon. It's yummy. I just try to limit how much of it we have because it's expensive. But I can make a pretty mean pork-free breakfast sausage, though. I've got recipes on that too. Anyway, but again, I'm glad that Tyler is so cool that he doesn't mind giving me a hard time like that. I love that about him. Even though we may stand a little bit different on that one issue, we serve the same God. And that is what matters. So anyway, with that said, I appreciate you all. Thank you again for your prayers. And I really do hope you have a blessed day and a great rest of your week. Thanks for coming in. Take care and God bless. Bye, all.